Okay, welcome back. So I took a break there to just stop the fantasy talk just for a second. We've now had 2 airlines go into administration in the space of, 3 months, 4 months, something like that. We're now going to have a situation where we are back again to the duopoly of Sydney and Virgin Australia. I think there's a chance that Rex's regional flights will in the long term be okay, but we're basically back to only 2 airlines now flying capital city. The natural order has been restored. Now, it to me seems extraordinary that, this has been happening for the last 40 years, 50 years. We just cannot get any competition in Australia, genuine competition, to go from 2 to 3, 4, 5 airlines. That really does point to, as many have said, an underlying problem with the industry. It can't always be the new players. Something's going wrong. What do you think the main reason is that yet again another challenge, another plucky underdog has been knocked out? I think
one of the big reasons is the duopoly is just so entrenched at the moment, and there's Qantas and Jetstar, this behemoth that is like sucking up all these flights and taking all. It's got the slots, it's got the planes, it's got the passengers, it's got the revenue, and then you've got Virgin Australia as well, in a respectable but kind of distant second. And it is hard for new players to break into the market, particularly considering Sydney-Melbourne is possibly the most lucrative air corridor in the world.
Yeah.
And you need to be flying out of Sydney if you want to make it. You need to be flying out of Sydney if you want to make a go of things. If you're trying to fly to capital cities, or even Bonza was desperate to get out into Sydney, and you need those slots at the prime times. And one of the main troubles is it's so difficult to get slots in Sydney, and it's so difficult to break the Qantas Virgin duopoly. I mean, prices as well. If you look at when Rex announced its Melbourne to Perth flights, it had like sale prices for I think $99. Virgin immediately came in and undercut them. Like Qantas and Virgin, you have to say, are pretty kind of ruthless in trying to maintain their hold on the market.
Protect their patch, yeah. And the weird thing is you can't really blame, you certainly can't blame the CEOs of Qantas for having done a good job of building their company and defeating their competition. That is their job. They've done nothing wrong here. But at the same time, we talk about a duopoly. As far as I'm concerned, it is a monopoly, because if you get to 65, 70% of the market, depending on how you measure it, you're such a beast that nothing can take you down. You would never have a situation, you would never have a situation in the US where one domestic airline or one international airline gets to 70% of the market. At that point, you're almost unbeatable. So that's one issue. You've got this monstrous entity of the Qantas group. But then the other issue is that in this country, we simply do not have enough airports. So again, one of the reasons we're getting Western Sydney at our aviation summit is we would hope that Western Sydney is the first of many second airports in the capital city.
Aside from Avalon.
And no disrespect, of course, to our good friends at Avalon. Love your work at Avalon. But like in terms of a major airport. And so the problem is, therefore, these airports, they're kind of slot constrained to one extent or another, obviously mostly at Sydney. But this makes it very, very hard for airlines to compete, because if the big airlines have the best takeoff times, have the best airports, it's very hard for anyone to come in. And so then you have to say long term, is there an argument for artificially breaking up Qantas? But that is one, would you come to that decision of doing it? Secondly, how legally viable would that be? And why? Also, it's very unfair on Qantas. They've done nothing wrong other than win, other than play their cards very, very well. But yeah, I kind of feel that unless we build more airports and unless we somehow attempt to break down Qantas, this is just going to keep happening, because it's been happening for years and years and years and years and years. You look at the old, I'm ranting now, I don't care, I'm keep going, right? We look at Virgin Australia when it last went into administration. So it's effectively a new company now. When it last went into administration in 2020, the last version of this, I think it was, off the top of my head, $7-8 billion that went down the drain. That's real people's money, real investment. So you can't say they didn't have a go. Virgin Australia, when they moved from Virgin Blue to Virgin Australia, was very gutsy in trying to become a full-service airline and take on Qantas. They lost a lot of money doing so you can't doubt their commitment to trying to make it work. You couldn't doubt Bonza's commitment to trying something new. Again, they had a lot of investment. They had a damn good go. So again, they've had a try, and obviously Rex as well spotted their gap in the market, spotted their opportunity in COVID, did everything right, and yet again, now in the space of what? Of 10, 15, 20 years now, we're watching these competitors do everything right, but the cards are so stacked against them, they've just got no hope. That to me says that we need to take as a nation bold long-term action to free up this industry.
I think the most obvious solution for if the government was looking to break up Qantas, the most obvious solution would be to just tell it, right, you got to sell Jetstar, you got to take Jetstar out of the equation. You've got to compete against Jetstar now. You can't, lock up this full service and this low cost market at the same time. You're too big. That said, Qantas did originally stand for Queensland and Northern Territory Aerial Services. So we could perhaps see Queensland Aerial Services and Northern Territory Aerial Services if they wanted to really throw a spanner. Maybe like a Quus and Ntus.
So you'd have, wouldn't the Q be on its own? Queensland
Aerial Services and Northern Territory Aerial Services.
So who's taking the and?
Well, nobody's taking the and. There's no and.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yes.
But so that's if the government, I don't think the government will. No, but if the government was looking to break up Qantas, I think telling it to divest Jetstar would be the most obvious move.
And the problem is that on paper that sounds fine. Oh, okay, just chop them up into two. But the truth is that Jetstar's operation is completely intertwined with Qantas's. Like a lot of sort of head office staff, they work for the Qantas group. It's not all perfectly. You can't just chop it in half. So then you'd have the question of, if you somehow were to disentangle this, first, I don't even know if that's legal. I mean, you can't just go and, just chop up a company. And secondly, if they were to somehow rip it apart, how profitable would Jetstar be without the support of the mothership? So the Qantas group, if you try to do that, would say, well, actually, if you take this away, it wouldn't work. Look at Tiger. They weren't able to make it work without the mothership of Qantas. So that's the issue there.
Well, Tiger later got under the mothership of Virgin.
Yes, of course. But you didn't have a bigger wizard mothership. I don't know. You know what I'm going.
Yeah. To your earlier point as well, Adam, about services. I think one factor that we saw with both Bonza and Rex is that people actually really liked those domestic services that Bonza and Rex were doing.
Yes, that's true.
People, there was glowing praise for Rex's in-flight services, for Bonza's in-flight services. We saw Bonza and Rex topping reliability charts for their domestic. Rex has been saying for months their domestic jet operations, carve the domestic jet operations out, look at them in isolation. They were the most reliable domestic airline in the country. So these airlines have been doing really good services, but it's been difficult for them to make money because the duopoly is so probably because the duopoly is so entrenched. And actually, I do want to remark on the fact that Rex is arguably the successor to Ansett, because Rex was born out of Hazelton and Kendall Enterprise, and on its own website it says it arose from the ashes of Ansett. So when Hazelton and Kendall merged, they became Rex. Rex and Bonza, they did great services, but it was remarked of Ansett back in the day that it was a great airline, but a terrible business.
Yeah, and that's a very good point you make, because I've seen a lot of the comments on our website, on social media, also kind of broadly on newspaper websites as well. And there was one comment from somebody who flew Rex's capital city flights, and he said, I was flying Qantas for years and years and years. I've made the leap to fly with Rex, and apart from the fact I saved me money, it was more reliable. Why was it more reliable? Because if you have a limited fleet, your flight may be delayed, but it's very unlikely to be cancelled, because at some point that thing has to go. The bus has to leave. Their business model collapses if the thing doesn't take off. So when you were flying those Rex flights, you had an almost guarantee that it's going to work. The other thing as well is Rex being a slightly smaller airline, it did very much have a family business feel. And it's a bit of an exaggeration to say that everybody knew everybody. But there was an element of that there. There was an element that when you have a smaller team, when they all kind of believe in the company and the mission a little bit more, you get better customer service. This is something that no amount of...
And you saw it with Bonza.
Yes, exactly the same thing.
The reports from Bonza is that the staff of Bonza really believed in the airline, and believed in what the airline was doing, and had a good time.
Yeah.
And really cared about the customers.
Everybody I know that flew Bonza, like first hand, told me they had a fantastic experience at every stage. Everyone was lovely. When I've flown Rex's 737 operation, I think it was once or twice I flew. Both of those were two of the best domestic flights I've had in Australia. My personal experience, everyone just cared that little bit more. There's no policy that makes staff care as much as a culture that they have built. So that's the crying shame here. You're actually losing something really good.
And I was supposed to fly on Rex in October. I had a flight booked with Rex down to Melbourne, and it makes me sad that I'm not going to get to experience. It made me sad that I wasn't going to get to experience Bonza when Bonza went under. I've contacted Virgin to rebook, and Virgin's fine. I like Virgin. I mainly fly with Virgin when I fly, but it does sort of make me sad that I'm not going to get the Rex experience, if you will. It is a crying shame, and I think that it's a loss of a product in the market. It's not just about the airfares; it's about the product. And it's a shame that product is gone now, and that we again are back to a situation where we have fewer choices. We have less variety in the market. If you want to fly from Sydney to Melbourne, Qantas, Jetstar, or Virgin. That's it.
So at the moment, the government is, I would hope, putting the finishing touches to its aviation white paper. So for those of you unaware of the anarchic, the old-fashioned world of British parliamentary systems, which is where this ultimately comes from. We had archaic, yes.
Yeah, anarchic means lawless, which may also be true.
Yes, true. Archaic. So basically, what they did, the government, which was I think quite good. The new, I say new now, quite old, Labour federal government basically said that the Libs weren't making anywhere near enough effort with aviation, and that they needed to have a long-term plan to take us to 2050 and beyond.
And Catherine King has said, there was a question, the opposition has criticised you for this and this, and Catherine King came out and very forcefully said, I'm not taking this from the opposition. They did nothing.
Yeah, exactly. So their argument, I don't want to get into politics, but their argument was the previous government gave up on governing, and that we need to have some kind of long-term plan. So we had an aviation green paper, which was kind of like the government's initial thoughts to how we should, the things that we need to consider, and their initial thoughts of how we should progress. And then the green paper leads to industry consultation. So that's lots and lots of submissions, and people can kind of come to them with their views, and they take all of this and they come up with a long-term plan to 2050. Now, God willing, this white paper is going to be published in the next 6 weeks or so. But surely now, if I were working on this white paper, I would say, well, we've had 2 airlines now go under in the space of a few months. We need to have a long-term plan to how we support new entrance. And clearly the shake-up of slot rules, or proposed shake-up of slot rules at Sydney Airport, will make a difference. But that alone is not enough. There needs to be a plan to allow these new entrants to have a chance. There surely also needs to be a plan as a nation to encourage companies both within Australia and from outside Australia to invest in this market. You need to make a situation where these things have a chance of succeeding, because clearly there is a lot of money in aviation. There is a lot of people that can do budget airlines very well globally. We had Virgin move into Australian Virgin Blue, and obviously that starts from Virgin Atlantic, from the Branson Empire. But there's nothing stopping, in theory, another a smaller operator saying, well, we fancy a chance in Australia. The government need to do something to sort out those problems and encourage investment. I personally think you look at it, people say Australia has quite a small population. Not so much anymore. It's a growing population.
One of the problems, though, is that it's very spread out.
Yes, exactly. That is true. You've got this thing that you've got a population of whatever it is, 25 million now. In reality, only half of them are living in the 3 big major cities or near them. So yes, it's spread out. But I still think this is nonsense. I still see no reason why you can't have 3 or 4 domestic operators that are all actually of a reasonable size and having a go and have relatively the same market share. But that's where we need to get to at some point, because competition is good for prices and is good for customer service.
And some people might say, well, what about high-speed rail? But we're not going to talk about that on this podcast.
Not on this show, no.
But, on the topic of government and Rex specifically, the government has sort of indicated that it wants more of a, like Catherine King has said, we want more of a say in what's going to happen in Rex's future, because Rex is basically an essential service for a lot of these airports that it connects to. If you're flying regional, there's a handful of operators. You've got Sharp Airlines, which, by the way, took a very backhanded swipe at Rex the other day, saying the government should support Rex, but only on routes where it wasn't competing with anyone else. Sharp Airlines did not like Rex, but you've got a handful of smaller operators. You've got Skytrans, you've got Fly Pelican, you've got Nexus Airlines, this new startup over in the West. You've got Link Airways. You've got all these handful of smaller operators. And they're basically essential services, but Rex was sort of the king of the hill there. And Catherine King was saying, getting back to what I was saying, Catherine King was saying that the government wants more of a say in what's going to happen with Rex. And there have been calls, the TWU have said the government should take a stake in Rex to be able to sort of guarantee more its future and guarantee the services, these regional services. Adam Bant from the Greens went further. He said that the government should nationalize Rex. The government itself should be operating Rex to make sure that these services happen. Like a public train or a public bus, right? So in terms of what the future of Rex itself is, there is some sort of, speculation swirling around. I mean, will the government take a stake in Rex to, kind of cement more of a say in what's going on and try to guarantee that these services continue? Will Virgin have a look and through its owners, Bain Capital, who have deep pockets? We were discussing this, last night when the news broke at him. Virgin could Virgin have a look at taking over Rex? Because if Virgin buys Rex, then that's a regional network, built up with planes ready to go right off the bat.
So the problem with that, and that does make sense. There is an argument for that. The problem is if they do that, then they end up slowly going back to the Virgin that they were before. And their strategy is to have an all 737 fleet. So there is, again, pros and cons. They could look at it and go, this is profitable.
They have VARA. They have Virgin Australia Regional Airlines, which is over in the West and hasn't really broken in on the East. And that sort of flies mainly like regional jets. They've got the Fokkers. They've got... I think a couple of A320s left over from Tiger Airways, but they're doing mainly stuff over in the West and I think over in South Australia. They're not really over on the East Coast. If Virgin takes over Rex, then suddenly Virgin Australia Regional Airlines could have a big presence on the East Coast. Snapping up Rex's entire network in one fell swoop. It also, Rex has that majority stake in National Jet Express. And, if Virgin takes over Rex and gets that stake in National Jet Express, suddenly it's got a bunch of E190s and Dash 8s as well. So that's a prospect for Virgin. Will they go for it? I don't know. There have been rumors as well. I think the Oz are speculating that PAG, that I think that Asian lender that stumped up the money for these 737s in the first place, may be looking to buy Rex out. It's all what's going to happen with Rex is very, very early days.
Now the interesting thing that we may or may not, depending on the administration here in the next week or so, is that friend of the show, John Sharp, who was deputy chairman, now chairman, but is effectively been running the operation, or has been the kind of the figurehead for this. Former transport minister, I believe, back in the day.
Under the Howard government.
Yeah, under the Howard government. Not a man to pull any punches or mince his words. Certainly somebody that's very outgoing and going and speaking to the media, etc. He will know more than anybody what has or hasn't gone wrong. I can't imagine we're going to keep him quiet for too long. So very soon we're going to hear the Rex side of the story.
There was, the main story about Rex recently has been this attempted boardroom coup by
Yes.
Lim Kim Hai, the former executive chairman. What's he looking to do?
Yes. So we're going to hear, we've heard all this speculation. There's two sides to every story. We haven't heard the Rex side of the story. We're almost certainly going to hear that very soon. So it's going to be very interesting, particularly given that I think we talked about this last week. Rex launched a kind of, not a major, but a fairly significant new advertising campaign. They had a creative agency or whatever in there to do this. So they thought certain elements of business were working, clearly.
Yeah, and I think I don't think that Rex was doing a lot of marketing for its domestic jet operations before this. They were putting out press releases and something, but I didn't recall seeing any Rex ad campaigns before this one, which they launched last week. A little too late, one might argue.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, that's I think we'll wrap up the Rexit talk, which you used in a different capacity,
Yes.
but it does work actually quite well on this one as well. We'll call this Rexit.
I'm Rex-austed.
Oh God! Right, we're going to go for a break.